Hi, this is Dr. Scott, and today we're going to skip over even the introduction. I just think we need to get into this urgent update. So, what I want to share with you is the FinCEN silliness. Okay, so approximately, what is it, a month ago, I think it is, that I did a FinCEN video. You can watch it if you want to, you don't have to, but I actually it's purple in there and I have orange over here. So I did an update and I was really kind of getting all pissy with uh, the Biden administration and the Treasury. And by the way, that was Janet Yellen, and she just quit a little bit ago. So it's pretty darn funny that happened. But let me kind of explain a little bit more what the heck we were talking about. Well, FinCEN is requires your banking issue you to file a separate report. Now, realize this: as a business versus a personal account, a business account already has to tell who owns that practice, that LLC, the S corporation, the C corporation, the 501c3, whatever that is. You have to actually tell all the principals, and then they know all the information about you. I mean, that's already done in every single banking issue that happens. But FinCEN decided to make this thing called uh, a Corporate Transparency Act. You see, they cloak it around transparency. And what they say is that you need to share this information so that we can catch money launderers and drug traffickers. Huh. And yet, those who are exempt were some legitimate 501c3s, which are fine, with that one, some nonprofit ones. But who was also exempted are bankers. And I go, okay, I guess, and they exempted out financial planners. I'm trying to remember the list here. Financial planners. They also exempted out any business over that has more than 5 million. So that's going to, really, that actually is even small, mid-sized businesses kind of thing. And let's see here, political officers, venture capitalists, and I'm going, okay, if you and I were to sit together and watch a movie, and there's a series called Reacher. Jack Reacher is a movie, but if you can watch the Reacher series, and they're coming out with the third season coming up. The second season came out. The whole thing is about money laundering. I mean, literally the whole thing, from start to finish, and how they handle it. Right? We're about ready to go to the quantum financial system that will fix money laundering and human trafficking issues in 5 seconds. And yet, what they want to do is push this little thing. So, actually, very interesting, you're going to learn that President Trump actually deleted this bill in his first term. But it was vetoed so that the Congress, along with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all the idiots, decided to put this sucker forward. And then they got it in 2021 and pushed it forward, and it went through several rounds of, wait a second, this isn't right. So I want to show you what actually occurred by the Texas court. So what they did is this. They said this one point. So this Texas court on the Corporate Transparency Act filed, I mean, they put together a lawsuit, and they had a 300,000 member, board of people that were like all pissed off with this. And they said, Congress shall have no power to regulate commerce among the several states. The fact that the company is a company does not knight Congress with some supreme power to regulate them in all aspects, that's a hard word for me to say, especially through the CTA, which does not facially regulate commerce. And you're going, right, because you're not talking about the Commerce Department, you're talking about the Treasury Department, right? So they just basically said they were going to put it off for 90 days past this deadline. Now, the funniest part here in this, the funniest, saddest part is this. that that it was a $591 fine a day, $10,000 fine, and 2 years in prison. And I had purposed between me and God, because I knew this was an unconstitutional act. Romans 13 says, if you have a law that is repugnant in essence, and isn't no, that's how the Declaration of Independence talks about this. But in essence, Romans 13 is a better reference of that point. It says, if there are things that are laws of God and then the laws of man violate that, you follow the laws of God. And while this one doesn't exactly kind of move in that area, I felt very strong I was not going to file this thing. And today is what, December 9th, and I was like, dude, I ain't filing. I don't care what you do. My accountant, my banker, we're all like mad at me. They all think I'm a crazy nut with this kind of thing. And so that's why I'm telling you, your voice can be heard. Listen to this guy. He does a gorgeous job at explaining.
The Corporate Transparency Act was just ruled unconstitutional by a federal judge in Texas. Now, this law that law is no longer in effect. It is no longer effective. You do not have to comply with it. Now, everyone's got a ton of questions about this, and as a lawyer, I've been fielding them from my clients. So I want to go over some of the most frequently asked questions about, well, what happens next? Or the first question is, well, what just happens next? Well, in the legal process here, this was a federal district court ruling where a federal judge in Texas looked at the law nationwide and said this is unconstitutional on its face as applied to everyone. Now, the federal government lost in the case. The federal government was trying to
Now, understand what he's saying, that a Texas federal court looked at businesses nationwide. So he's looking at the Constitution, or they were looking at the Constitution, and ruled a 79-page document. Real interesting.
defend this law. So what happens now is the federal government has to appeal the court's ruling to get the law back in effect, and they will appeal that ruling to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. This is the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals between the Federal District Court, Court of Appeals, then you got the U.S. Supreme Court. But they got to go to the Fifth Circuit.
Now, I had said this was a federal court. Well, it was the Texas Federal Court, which means that they can speak into federal matters when they step on the states. And that's kind of what it meant. And I was wrong about that. So I'm going to share. I was wrong. People ever realize I say wrong things. I did. Okay, I said a wrong one.
Federal Court of Appeals first. That's the court where Texas rolls up to. Now, what has FINCEN said about this? The Department of Justice? Nothing. They've been silent on this in the past couple of days. There have been no statements issued, and FINCEN is still collecting BOI reports on their website, despite a federal injunction telling them they cannot enforce the law right now. They're still getting their crap together on. They're going to say, they may say, we're going to follow the court's ruling. They may say, we disagree with this. And the Biden administration, who's still in power right now, their Justice Department, their Department of Treasury may say, we're going to appeal this, and they're going to may go to the Fifth Circuit immediately. And one of the biggest questions is, where does President-elect Trump stand on this? Well, interestingly, he vetoed the original legislation that had the Corporate Transparency Act. There was an omnibus national defense bill that he vetoed. Now, when he vetoed that bill, he said, I'm vetoing this because I don't agree with the defense spending. He thought it was too much. He didn't comment on the BOI filing or the Corporate Transparency Act. Now, his veto was overridden by Congress, and this did become the law of the land. Now, I think it's highly likely a new Trump administration, a new Justice Department, a new Department of the Treasury, a Department of Government Efficiency is going to come in and say, yeah, let's let this law die. I had some other people ask me, should I still file my BOI out of an abundance of caution and make sure it's in before December 31st? I don't think you should. Why would you? A federal court has said this law is unconstitutional, and that ruling applies to you. It applies.
Like, think about what he just said. And there's a guy that I didn't even show you his information because he was kind of pissed. He was a little bit pissed off because he was telling people how to file it. I saw people, if you go on to YouTube, you can find a ton of people telling you how to file something and what you should do to file it and file it. And he said, basically file it anyway. It's not that big a deal. It doesn't really harm you. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, you got to be nuts to say that. And that was a CPA that was saying this. This guy is a lawyer. I love what he said. So what I'm telling you is that we need to push back on things like this. I just found out about this one. And again, I'm probably coming late to the game on this particular one. Listen to this one. This is a very shortened video. Watch the wording that they call this bill. Remember the Corporate Transparency Act, right? Like the Patriot Act. Watch this puppy.
One, the politicians vowed to go after wealthy.
Let me back it up here. Sorry.
In 2021, the politicians vowed to go after wealthy tax cheats, and they passed the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. Now, this is going to affect about 20 million Americans this tax filing season. I want to summarize it for you, and here's what you need to know. If you receive $20,000 a year from a third-party payment processor, such as, here are the most common ones, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, Apple Pay, etc., then that platform, so let's just take PayPal as an example, PayPal would send you a tax form. So if you're receiving a larger volume of money with one of these platforms, then you would get this tax form. But now, the American Rescue Plan changed the threshold from $20,000 to $600,000. So this
So what I want you to realize is they keep screwing with Americans, and they come up with the term 600. You just go, 600, where have I heard that one before? 6 is the number of man. 666 is the mark of the beast. Now, I'm not saying this is mark of the beast, but it's just the way that the cabal likes to talk about things. They like to use the word 6. Why didn't they just make it 700 or $1,000 or $500? Or why didn't they just say anything over $250? They say 600. It tells you where their alliance is and how the mentality of their wording says. That's why they even, did you know Fauci, when he kind of made up the conversation of being 6 foot apart, and you go, why should people during COVID be 6 foot apart? Why can't they be 5 feet apart or 12 feet apart or 10 feet apart, right? You don't even think about 6 if you're thinking about feet. You normally would think 10 feet away or 5 feet away or something like that. But 6 feet, and again, they use the number of 6 because that's they're telling you their orientation. And they're saying they're going after wealthy Americans. First off, someone who receives $20,000, you're talking about a potential business. Let's say someone has, no, there's the movie, which I really recommend you watching. It is done by the old Fed chairman, Steve Mnuchin, called The Accountant. And I think this comes out in 2015 when at that time frame. I've watched it several times. It's so good. Ben Affleck plays this autistic man who is way, way high functioning, very, very interesting person. And in there, they have a federal agent. So this one federal agent, and behind him in the background, I saw FINCEN. And I was like going, FINCEN, and it kind of clicked at me the other day when we watched it. I was like, that's exactly who this organization. Now, FINCEN is just a financial crimes, kind of unit that they like to move into the cash areas. So what I'm trying to tell you is that we need to push back. A company who, and in there is this company, that Ben Affleck plays the character, that they help someone who is just doing knitting and other kinds of things. And maybe she collects with her friends who pay her, $20,000. That's a tiny amount for a business. And yet now they push it from 20,000 down to $600. This just, come on. Guys, we need to push back and continue to push back, continue to embarrass people in the government, continue to go after them and tell them, no way. If you're an accountant, if you're a banker, if you're a lawyer, you need to wake up and listen to me on this kind of stuff. Because they call it a law doesn't mean that it is constitutional, boys and girls. And see, the constitutional point, sorry, I banked the camera here, which is pretty powerful. The constitutionality has to come with the courts. And we have to keep pushing at them when they're not constitutional. Trust me, the train's coming, and it's coming hard for them. Thanks so much.